Money is key because electrification isn't cheap. A survey of 90 people from the sustainable-focused research group Carbon Switch found that the total cost of installing an induction stove, on average, can be upward of $3,000 when you factor in the electrical work. Induction stoves require higher voltage and proper electrical wiring. Older buildings, in particular, may require new wiring that can safely handle the heat being generated. Shoddy wiring can overload a system or spark a fire. An electrician and former environmental journalist.
The work becomes even more costly and complicated if you're rewiring an entire building. Wires are hidden under floorboards and behind walls, reaching them can mean gutting a room. A project can become especially unwieldy in apartment buildings where property owners have to answer to regulators and inspectors who may require more upgrades than a landlord envisioned. The building's electrical capacity limited which apartment units could join the program. The program successfully completed in 2022 despite that hurdle, but it highlighted the challenges.
Those deficiencies need to be addressed in order to then meet our climate goals and electrify our housing. Climate Justice Campaign Manager. That begins with stronger building codes and performance standards that would not only help the U.S. meet its emissions targets but also protect families from lung irritants like nitrogen dioxide that gas stoves release. Investing in the right technologies can help, too. Some companies are developing induction stoves with a built-in lithium battery. A competitive challenge in July to help spur the design of more appliances.
An indeterminate lesion of the brain can potentially be a benign or a malignant lesion, read the results. Unfortunately, we are unable to determine the exact nature of the lesion. The nurse told her to follow up with a neurologist, then hung up. When she asked a Prenuvo customer service representative about the discrepancies, they received inaccurate reports or were advised to undergo additional testing on false positives. The subsequent testing, biopsies, and procedures instead leading thousands of people to suffer from thyroidectomy complications.
The majority of housing in the United States is going to experience at least climate-related hazard in some way or another. These could present as acute incidences, like hurricanes and wildfires, or chronic events, like an extended heat wave or drought. It's going to mean we have to start thinking much more about not just building a generic house that we think of historically in this country, he continued. He notes that building to code only means building to a minimum requirement. What's worse is that climate disasters hit and social vulnerability are intimately linked.
He also uses things like rammed earth walls to help insulate a home from heat and cold. Building and retrofitting homes to be more resilient to heat is relatively easy. However, creating homes that can withstand hurricane-force winds and frequent flooding is not. Homes have filed lawsuits against the organization, claiming that the homes were not built with humidity and rainy climates in mind. It turns out, some of the homes have started rotting and decaying. Florida have already hardened their homes against massive storms and wind.
The Biggest Questions is a mini-series that explores how technology is helping probe some of the deepest, most mind-bending questions of our existence. Neuroscientists, for example, are learning that the brain can survive surprising levels of oxygen deprivation. This means the window of time that doctors have to reverse the death process could someday be extended. Other organs likewise seem to be recoverable for much longer than is reflected in current medical practice, opening up possibilities for expanding the availability of organ donations.
As the frequency and devastation of disasters increase, we're starting to realize how infrastructure, climate, and long-time institutions interconnect. And as the climate changes, our housing is uniquely vulnerable. As the world emerges from a record year for climate disasters, damages have reached a new peak. This year, there were 24 disasters that each incurred more than $1 billion in damages, claiming 250 lives and displacing hundreds of thousands of others to shelters and temporary housing. Building codes have evolved to meet energy and efficiency codes.
This is the best-case scenario. The Nelsons were alerted to what could have become a life-threatening diagnosis. First, the couple was informed of the possibilities in a brief and confusing phone call with a Pronovo nurse practitioner. Which is one unique way to say brain tumor. Like, please use language that we understand. That explanation was so piss poor. Her husband's radiology report described the mass, two very different kinds of brain tumors. The most aggressive and one of the most terrifying, worst cancers you can be diagnosed with.
When we see something particularly concerning, it is our responsibility and in the service of our patients to be cautious and recommend a follow-up. This is how we've alerted on average 1 in 20 patients to potentially life-saving findings. Several patients said that when they approached Pronovo about inaccurate results or asked to speak to medical professional, she had been frustrated by the slow pace of the traditional healthcare system. A professor of radiology and biomedical imaging would have eventually led to headaches. He got the tumor removed, preempting symptoms,